All right, we should be live here, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. You can see me okay. Apologize for having to see me. Voice and a face for radio, I suppose. Still waiting to connect to Rumble as we speak right now, but we've got just a quick show for you today. I think the important thing here is that we all have a chance to talk and voice opinions and ask questions and all that good stuff. So that's why we're switching from recordings to live. I think it's a better platform for all of us to be able to learn together. But let me go ahead and get us up and running here. All right. Well, it looks like we are on and ready to go. All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming to the Rice Report today. I can see your chats in the window here. I think we're still connecting to Rumble. It takes a little bit of time to get there. Rumble is under some serious attacks these days, which is expected when you allow that to actually to transmit free speech. You'll have some problems these days. I can testify to that. Error connection. Let me start Rumble again here. Okay. We are up and running now on YouTube and Rumble. Thank you, everybody, for coming here today. Welcome to the Rice Report. I'm Eric Rice, here to host for you. We are switching from a video platform into a live platform. We're going to go ahead and stream here a few times a week. I'm going to try to do it every day, but of course, life, work, all these other things get really busy, so I'm trying my very best to get that done for all of you and get some information, some news to you here today. We got a lot to go through today. There's more going on in the world than I can cover in this very short period of time here live, so I'm just going to go ahead and spitball some stuff. We're going to talk about the three things that you're never supposed to talk about in public, which is always going to be money, politics, and religion. So we're going to kick everything here off by understanding what's happening in the economy. I think it's important to go with some good news first. Gold has now hit its all-time high for the second consecutive day. A 400-ounce bar of gold, which is your traditional storage bar of gold that they'll use in repositories and banks and things like that. A 400-ounce bar of gold is now officially $1 million. While that's a great thing for folks like us who bought gold 2 or 3 years ago in the 1500s and 1600s, not time period, but dollar amount. If you're holding from the 1500 and 1600 period, you're doing great right now. But those of us who bought fairly cheap, we've made some great returns on gold in the past year and a half to 2 years. We've been talking about that for a while here. I've been saying on the show for the better part of 3 years on multiple platforms. The 5 things I see working in the future are oil and gas, gold, silver, Bitcoin, and raw land. Those 5 things will never take you in the wrong direction when you're looking at potential hard times ahead, which I think are not potential anymore. I think these are guaranteed hard times moving forward, and gold tells that story. So if you want to know what's coming in the economy, you always have to watch tangible hard assets. You always need to keep your eyes on gold, silver, oil and gas, and the price of raw land, just timberland or waterways. Things like that will really tell the story, and those prices are hiking there, but they lag through the rest of the market. You know, we've seen the big run-up of the Magnificent Seven. We've seen all the big run-ups that have happened in the world, the crypto space, and we've seen all that kind of stuff happening all throughout the marketplace. But gold tells the story. Now you're watching a tremendous amount of money pour into gold, pour into Bitcoin. You're watching hard assets receiving the capital from scared investors. And to be frank with you, there aren't as many scared investors as there possibly should be. And I'm not a fear monger. I do this show for free. I've done this show for free forever. I just try to give out information that I hope will help people in bad times. I don't want anything in return for it. What I'm telling you to do are the exact same things that I'm doing in my portfolio. There's absolutely no divergence from that. But the real story we're going to find out is going to come in October. The GDP, the next GDP number comes out in October, and I think that's probably the most important number to watch in the entire world, not just in this country, not just in the United States. Throughout the entire world, the world's eyes are upon the American GDP because the Fed, our central bank, essentially runs all the other central banks throughout the entire world. We do have some overlord bosses there with the BIS and the IMF, but essentially the Fed kind of conducts the pathway. So while everyone's talking about rate cuts and lowering interest rates and trying to stimulate real estate growth or stimulate the lending market, I have my eyes completely fixed on 2 things right now from a financial perspective, and that's always hard assets and risk assets, because I think risk assets are going to see a big influx of capital when the GDP is finally announced. So the GDP by itself is another dishonest number given out by our government. They use it to rig algorithmic trading, which is why you've seen such a big increase in the stock market with such poor performing economic factors in the real world. Of course, we've talked for years about how the jobs report is rigged. The GDP is rigged in the exact same way. They use oil and gas sales and all kinds of other things to pump up the GDP when the actual GDP has been declining for the better part of 2 years. When you remove specific things like natural gas sales in 2022 and 2023 to Europe with big premiums placed on those. But the GDP in October is something I'm looking at because I believe there'll be an influx into risk assets. The GDP is the focus in the market. We're not really looking at CPI anymore. Of course, inflation is a number that we all understand is very important for the markets to keep an eye on, but inflation right now is a foregone conclusion. We are already past half of the country doesn't trust the inflation numbers we're being given. So that kind of negates the usefulness of that number. And for their intentions, being down at 2.9% is really the number they were looking for. So even the Fed is now looking towards the GDP number as opposed to the CPI number. So it's something really important to keep your eyes on. While this is all happening, a couple of weeks ago, I just did a show on the Jason Burma show, and we talked about the carry trades and what happened with the big swing in the market a couple of weeks ago. So everyone was quick to rush to, this is 100% due to the carry trades. That's actually statistically not true at all. It has 100% to do with the actual recessionary or depressionary fundamentals that we're seeing in the market, as well as the divergence between government reporting and what our eyes and our ears see. So when we look at this information coming out in the future, I know everyone looks to inflation. They give that number every month. The GDP only comes once a quarter. Keep your eyes focused on the GDP. It's going to be very important because the DXY, the value of the dollar versus other currencies, is now at its yearly low. So the dollar is as low as it's been this entire year. It's at about 101.6. Meanwhile, the yen is now at 144. So the yen has really gained some ground. The central bank there infused about $122 billion to re-strengthen the yen. And of course, people will rush to say it's the carry trade, but the carry trade is a symptom. It's not the disease. The disease is that right now the global GDP numbers are about 220% more. So nations around the world on average globally owe 220% more money than they make in an average year. That has always been the problem. It always will be the problem. Carry trades are a symptom. They're a very small piece of the puzzle, though they are a triggering mechanism for much larger things. Now, as I said in an episode 2 weeks ago, when all of that happened, the whole world was sitting there claiming this is the black swan. It's coming. That's by no means a black swan day. That was a duck. That was a bad day in the market. You're looking at 4, 5, 6%. These are average bad days in the market. And by the way, I also said on that show that there's about $7 trillion sitting in money market accounts. And that's just for consumers and companies. That has nothing to do with nation states and their capital that they have behind them. What you've been watching for the last 2 weeks is a bunch of arbitrage traders that sat on the sideline waiting for that dip. They bought that dip, and now they're profiting from it, and they're beginning to sell again. So you'll watch tremendous volatility rise in the marketplace. So if you listen to my episodes a few months ago, I think I did 4 consecutive episodes telling people to buy either an ETF or directly through the commodities board to be able to buy your portion of the VIX, the VIX. Now, the VIX is a great story because when I was first telling people to buy it, it was at $10.50. It shot up to $65 in less than 3 minutes. That is a huge gain that you will just not see in the marketplace in a normal environment. It's already back down in the teens. So thankfully, hopefully all of you paid attention that morning and dumped it out in the 50s and 60s and made some great cash from it. I was very happy with the trade myself. The VIX is definitely on my radar again. So I'm looking at a few things right now. The DXY falling, gold rising. That's a very good story to look at from a strength of economy perspective. But I think the VIX is going to we're going to see what we're watching is not a dead cat bounce. We are now 1.6% away from an all-time high in the S&P. The S&P broke through what I thought was the top at 50 in the 5,500. That's now in the 5,600s. These things are being overinflated. Every corporation right now is trading at a multiple that is undesirable for international investors. It's way overpriced. You can go to Brazil and get cheap stocks. You can go into Russia and get cheap stocks. America, everything is very expensive. And most of the world invests via real estate and stock markets at this point in time. So it's important to have your eyes and your ears glued to that to see what I'm seeing. And hopefully I'm right again, because being wrong in money is not a good situation to be in. But I think that we're looking at an area where I would start accumulating the VIX around $15, $16 again. I think that we will see another shakeup in the market, whether it comes from one of the catastrophic events that the World Economic Forum is telling us to watch out for, which are always orchestrated and constructed. They're not warnings. They're I don't even know what you'd call them. They are they're predictive programming for what's coming. And they're talking about a massive cyber pandemic or a biohazard attack. I fully expect one of these things to happen. That's going to cause great volatility in the market. It's going to be tremendous for the VIX. So the VIX, I think, is a very good trade if you're looking to dip in and out of the stock market and make some cash, and then cash out and buy more gold or silver or Bitcoin or whatever it is that you're looking for. I also think that the price of oil right now, when you correlate it with the price of gold, oil is exceptionally cheap. So most commodities trade for one another, and you're starting to see nations like Russia, who has been taking gold for their oil for the better part of 4 years now. So you have to look at the correlation between gold and oil in order to determine what the pricing is, the true active, effective pricing of oil is. And I think oil right now is at its steepest discount in gold value in the last 4 or 5 years. So the oil futures market, or if you're a private investor in an oil and gas deal like I am, you get great tax benefits, but I would expect to see a rise in the price of oil over the coming months. So I still think that's a very good place to have your money, especially if you're getting a big 100% tax advantage. That's a big benefit to have. One of the biggest warning signs that I'm seeing in the marketplace right now is this morning Goldman Sachs dropped their likelihood of a recession from 25 to 20%. How anyone who gets paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to do economic analysis only had a 25% chance of a recession on their analyst board is shocking to me. Number one, it just shows you the persuasion that the deep state or the elite or whatever you want to have has over everyone. Because I've had many a dinner with people who are very corporate, and you can tell that their life revolves around their job. They need that job. Totally understand it. But when it comes to being an analyst, a financial analyst, where people are turning to you for your advice and their retirement savings so that they can retire on time and enjoy their life, I think we need to be a little more harsh on these people who are only at 20% chance of a recession. The reason they're stating this is because inflation is down. Fake inflation is down. Fake GDP is up. All the other fake labor numbers look good until tomorrow, because tomorrow they're going to start announcing a readjustment from the existing jobs reports that have come out over the past few months, years, to be honest with you. But they're going to revise these down 1 million jobs. I've been telling you guys this since 2021, since Mumbletard took office for his first time. It's very apparent to me what's happening, and it's why I do these shows. There's no other reason to do them. I thoroughly enjoy my life. I enjoy my family, my faith. I love exercising, and I love eating right. And this takes away from that time. I do this because I'm scared for the American public. I'm scared that the average person out there is wasting their time reading fake reports and shoveling money into the wrong places, which ultimately is going to cause the demise of an entire society. This is an intention, in my opinion, by communists who are trying to collapse an economy and take control of our nation, which all of us, if you're on this live stream, I'm sure that you're very well aware that that is my opinion, and I also believe that to be a fact. Where we are right now. We'll get into that in just a moment. But when they revise the jobs numbers down, it's going to skew everything. It's going to start exposing things in the economy that we already know, like unemployment is much higher than they're telling us. Illinois just came out with their unemployment numbers, run completely blue state. By the way, I'm from Chicago, lived on the border of Indiana, Illinois, a lot of my life. I will tell you out there, if you get upset with the people of Illinois, understand that the only blue voters that exist are really in Chicago. The rest of Illinois and all of Indiana outside of the major cities is completely red and very conservative, but they are run by Democrats. And right now they have a 5.2% unemployment rate in Illinois. That is the second largest in the country. I think we're going to start seeing a lot of states posting 5 to 6, maybe 8% unemployment rates when these numbers get adjusted. So be aware of that. That's also something that could shock the market, creating a good turn of events for the VIX. It's another thing to look out for. I try to make things as simple as I possibly can. I don't want to get into international derivative options trades and all these other crazy things. Keep your life very simple. I think the VIX is a good place to go. Junior miners and gold, I think, are also a good place to go. The one thing about gold that kind of led me to Bitcoin, to be honest with you, is that we don't know how finite gold is. One thing we do know about gold is as soon as the price goes up, miners start mining. So we know that there are reserves that are uncalculated throughout the world, and that's an opportunity, not a bashing. It's an opportunity. As the price of gold rises, this gives you the ability to buy into the mining stocks if you're playing the stock market, because I think that they're going to see a tremendous return, especially with the amount of nations that are joining the BRICS coalition and not using the US dollar, which, by the way, is also sort of a real world fallacy. There's definitely some fantasy that happens in the world. We all fall victim to it. 58% of all money held in treasury reserves all throughout the world, doesn't matter what nation you're in, are still the US dollar. So that number is way down, but it does take quite some time to completely eliminate the dollar from your trading perspective. And of course, we know new payment platforms are on the way with the BRICS countries, and they've been stocking up gold for a gold-backed dollar, or gold-backed currency. I don't know if they'll call it the dollar. But we do know that something is on the way over there, and I think that it's going to be something that anyone can profit off of as long as they understand what's happening and they have good timing. So I think junior miners, mid-level miners are probably a good play there as well. But we also have to look at the numbers in this country. So while Goldman Sachs, who's accumulating Bitcoin on the OTC over the counter, not through the exchange affecting price, this is well known. They've also disclosed their ETF holdings. 60% of all hedge funds right now own Bitcoin ETFs. Many of them are acquiring Bitcoin over the counter, off the exchanges right now. But we do know that they have just told the general public that they think there's less of a chance of a recession. Well, let me explain how a recession occurs, or a depression occurs. Over the course of time, a currency will lose value, and that's a byproduct of the increase in the value of hard assets like real estate and gold, things like that. As the dollar or the currency devalues, other triggers start to happen. You start watching a loss in profits for corporations. You see major layoffs, unemployments, bankruptcies, and failure of new startups. These are really big indicators of bad things to come in an economy. And right now, bankruptcies are being filed at the highest rate. Corporate bankruptcies are being filed at the highest rate in U.S. history. We're also seeing personal bankruptcy being filed at the highest rate in U.S. history. And that correlates directly with the fact that we are now $1.3 trillion in credit card debt at an average of 24%. So the American populace right now owes almost $600 billion a year to credit card companies for using money they don't have, and not a penny of that $600 billion will knock down their principal owed. So these are really bad spots. Startups right now are failing at 60% faster clip than they did in the past. You know, startups have always had a very high failure rate. That's part of the American dream. I'm a startup guy by nature. I've failed many times in my career, and most of my successes that I've seen come at the mid stage. So startups are very hard. And in an economy like this, where there's really not a lot of VC money pouring in, angels are holding on to their capital because they're scared for the currency, they're scared for the market, they're scared for the politics in this country. When there's no funding going into startups, it's very difficult to generate revenue. So revenue generation comes from a lot of consumers with a lot of discretionary money. And what this data is telling us is there isn't very much discretionary spending capital out there right now. And more importantly, there's almost no funding going into startups. I'm a startup guy by nature. 4 years ago, I met my now business partner. We're both startup guys. And he said, what are you doing now? And I said, nothing until this economy turns around. I'll take a job before I start a company at this point. Fortunately, the industry we're in, I think we're self-funded. We don't need to raise any money, but at the same time, very scary time for startups, which means that no new emerging companies, no new job providers out there. These are very bad, very dark signs moving forward. Now, Bankrate came out with a very good study. They said the average American household needs to make about $186,000 a year to live a good life. However they gauge a good life. Everyone's opinion's different. But the average family in America makes $79,000. So we're looking at almost double the amount of money of the average American household is needed in order to live what they term as a good life. So if you're in that boat and you're in that scenario, that's why we're seeing so much debt accumulation right now, because people don't have the money to live a good life. So they're borrowing money at 24 to 28% and driving themselves further into debt. And that is just a shame and a scam at the same time. Insurance rates are rising all across the board. Our last inflation numbers said that health insurance dropped 33%, which is why inflation was down, except for the fact that every single person on this live and every person watching this recording later can testify on their own. I know I can. My health insurance rates are up almost 40%. So these lies in the marketplace are really designed, they're deviant in nature. When you're lying about actual publicly released numbers to the market, you're putting every person at risk, because in these fiat economies, when you print money out of thin air, inflation is mandatory in fiat. It is part of the game. It's part of the system we've had to live in our whole life. What it really does is it steals your time and your energy from your life. So every time someone gets a paycheck, they know if I save this money in fiat, it's going to be worth less 10 or 15 or 20 years from now than it is today, which basically forces every normal person to become a research analyst, a hedge fund manager, and a trader. This is the problem in this country. Most people don't know how to do these things, which again is why I do these shows. I've been in these positions from a professional standpoint, and I'd like to share that knowledge with people. I try to keep things simple. There are ways to make money. I will tell people if you're nervous about volatility or you're nervous about losing money, to put your money in precious metals. If you're trying to make money, I will tell you there's mining stocks, there's the VIX, there's these little tiny things you can look at. This is not financial advice. Let me make that abundantly clear to all of the regulators watching this. I'm talking about my own personal portfolio. And if you're looking for the upside, that's why I've gone to Bitcoin. That's exactly why I've been there. And I'll be happy to do our workshop later this week. I just want to test out our lives here to see how we get going, because the process of recording, editing, uploading, sharing is really tedious. And I want to be able to hop on with you guys at any point in time. So these are kind of the stats on the economy. One of them that doesn't get talked about a lot, and there's some cruelty going around, I think, on the internet. It was exposed last week that hackers stole pretty much every living and dead person's social security number. Last week, I saw a bunch of people online saying this is fake, it's a hoax. That really happened. That's been confirmed multiple times. And I think it's being done for a couple of reasons. Number one, as I've talked about for years now, as economies crumble, scammers get more rambunctious. You're going to get a lot of scam phone calls, scam emails, scam everything. You see it on Telegram or Twitter. You get scam DMs from fake accounts trying to take your money in some capacity. This is going to accelerate that scam component, number one. And I also think they're using it to use these social security numbers and addresses of living and dead people to bolster voter rolls before November comes, because we're watching this big illusion build. And I'll get into that in just a few minutes. I think one of the more interesting things that came out today is it was now confirmed that U.S. pharmaceutical and biotech companies that produce drugs and pharmaceuticals, have been running trials with the Chinese military for the better part of a decade. Now, if you are a conspiracy theorist, which it means that you're right 9 to 10 months in advance, like I am, we already knew this was happening, but it's now being exposed in Congress, and yet still nothing is being done yet. I will give you that main term, yet. Things will happen there. Now, on the real estate side of things, we're also seeing big number jump. The inventory in Florida and Arizona is completely flooded. You look at Phoenix. I did an episode a few weeks back about the eviction rate in Phoenix. There are more people being evicted right now every month than there ever have been. Florida has a ton of inventory in the marketplace right now. Where I live in Texas, we're watching inventory build here, but you're not hearing about these things in the news. So when we look at all these things, drug trials are one thing. I did forget to put in real estate in my economic breakdown. I think real estate is another area I would sit on the sidelines for a while, unless you're buying your own personal residence, because the money kind of shouldn't matter. But if you are out there looking to make a real estate investment, I think you're better off putting your money in precious metals or Bitcoin or something like that and waiting out, because there will be discounts in the market, maybe discounts that you haven't seen since 2008. And that will be coming up in my estimation, my humble estimation, anywhere between early to mid 2025. I think that it's unavoidable that we see a correction in that market. I actually think gold is going to have a correction coming up, a 5 to 10% correction before it jumps. I'm not a TA. I'm not a technical analyst. I certainly don't have I forgot the name of the website. A website you can pay me for advice. I don't have that. I'm just telling you from a trading perspective and a money manager past, opportunities are going to arise. So it's a matter of finding those places you can park some capital while you have to manage inflation and insurance and all the other stuff. That's about all I have on that side of things right now. Let's get into some conspiracy stuff that's actually popping up all around us right now. And I see very few people covering this, especially the mainstream media. 3.5 weeks ago, a plane crashed in Brazil. 2.5 weeks ago, excuse me. Plane crashed in Brazil. 62 people on the plane, publicly filmed, middle of a village. They filmed the entire plane going down. There were 8 doctors on that plane that were heading to now this is unconfirmed because no one really knows where they're heading, but they were supposedly heading to a conference to talk about turbo cancer being caused by the vaccines. And this is a rising theme that you'll find if you do enough research throughout history. If you invent engines that run on water, you're going to get killed. If you cure cancer, you're going to get killed. If you're talking about cancer and vaccines, you're probably going to get killed. And we've been watching this happen for quite some time. And this is just another example that popped in, and something I didn't cover in my last episode. So I wanted to touch base on that. I haven't done too much digging on it. I'm actually spending a lot of time today researching Mike Lynch, which I think is a fascinating story I know nothing about, but I'm going to talk about it today because I think it's very interesting to look at all the things that are happening right now. And I'll kind of rewind a little bit. So when we talk about people who cure cancer or water, it just reminds me back to like one of the worst stories in American history, but one of those things that really tells you how long this nation has been corrupt. In the early turn of the 20th century, the early 1900s, Henry Ford invented a car that ran on alcohol. And this car ran on alcohol, required no gasoline at the time, no fossil fuels, no oil. I hate that term fossil fuel, it's incorrect. However, at that time, it was interesting because he was selling these cars that ran on alcohol. And there was nothing that Rockefeller could do to persuade him, because they were both wealthy men, he didn't have any leverage on Ford, to get him to start using gas-powered vehicles. So over the course of a couple years, what Rockefeller did was he created the temperance movement. He radicalized a bunch of liberal white women around the country to demonize alcohol, blamed drunk husbands on all the ills of the nation. And for 4 years, alcohol was banned in this country until Ford capitulated and went back to gas engines. So when you see these people dying and these things that happen all throughout the world, cancer doctors dying, they definitely have something here. I don't want to even beat around the bush. Like, there's something to that plane crash in Brazil, and there's been very little research done about it. And it's fascinating to me. It's a topic we should all really study and pay attention to. Now, the one that came up in the last few days is Mike Lynch. Mike Lynch is the owner of a company called Autonomy that sold his business to Dell for to Hewlett Packard for $11 billion a few years back. Hewlett Packard thought that he overestimated the financials of his company. They accused him of fraud. He went through a trial. He was extradited from the UK to the United States to go through trial here with Hewlett Packard. He was found innocent on all 15 charges. The ironic thing is he stated he was found innocent because he's rich. So he actually probably told the truth, which might be the reason Mr. Lynch isn't here today. But Mike Lynch is an interesting story. So Mike Lynch, his attorney who won the fraud case, along with the international chair of Morgan Stanley, decided to go on a private cruise in a yacht near Sicily. Now, there was a tornado over the sea that took out only one boat. There was only one boat that went down, and that was Mike Lynch's boat. There were hundreds of boats in the water, but only a very expensive, almost unsinkable yacht sank. So while the fishermen, who have much lesser vessels for the water, they went home to their friends and family after the storm, but Mike Lynch, his lawyer, and the international chair for Morgan Stanley are now at the bottom of the sea, presumed dead. 2 days before this happened, Mike Lynch's partner was hit by a car while he was riding a bike or jogging. I forgot what it was, but he was hit by a car and he was killed. Now, there's many theories going around, but I think it's important to understand the elevation, to really understand who Mike Lynch was. He had the title of OBE. And OBE in England is for the Order of the British Empire. You don't get that title lightly. That title is done for very influential people. I'm a big fan of Peaky Blinders. I love that series. And eventually, Tommy became an OBE. That was part of his negotiation with Churchill for the blackmail he had on Churchill. Was to get the title of OBE. So Mike Lynch was an OBE. These are very protected people in the UK. It's interesting to me that they allowed an extradition for his trial. It's also interesting to me that he died. So when we look at this event that's happening right now, and there are rumors, I haven't verified this because I just started researching it today, that his lawyer was also Epstein's lawyer. I couldn't find anything on that. To be honest with you, I spent about 10 minutes searching his name along with Epstein. I didn't find any correlation, so there's definitely going to be, if true, right? Guys, you have to remember that in these trying times, everything you read right now or hear right now, start with the phrase, if true. That's so important for you to do. But when we look at this, a mini tornado over the sea doesn't take out any other vessel except for a $100+ million yacht, which are pretty unsinkable. I mean, they really don't go down very often. And the people inside, very influential people as well. So that and the Brazilian plane crash tells me a lot of things are happening behind the scenes. A lot of people are either being silenced or a lot of people are starting to talk. So for me, that was a big thing. To see the OBE title was just very shocking to me. OBEs don't get killed. Look throughout history. OBE is the equivalent of like a publicly announced Mason, right? These are a very protected class of people. Now, the UK is also an interesting story because they're setting free 5,000 prisoners who've committed felonies in the UK to make room for people like me and you who speak our mind online. So if you think that this is just an American problem that we're going through, this is a global takeover of magnitudes that I don't understand. And we are watching nation states letting prisoners go free to put people in jail who make social media comments that they dislike. This is definitely coming to a neighborhood near you. If we're watching anything, we're watching the acceleration, the exposure of tyranny every single day. There's more tyranny being exposed now than there ever has been in the history of mankind. I'm extremely optimistic for the future, but I also am realistic about the present moment. And we really need to focus our attention and our time on the important things in life. And one of the most important things in your life that you may not realize is the fact that you can say and do what you please for the time being. That freedom that we have is so overwhelming to other nations that people flee here just for that purpose until now. Now we are seeing a transition in the flee to freedom. Putin just put out a formal letter stating that he is now creating a safe haven for those trying to escape Western liberalism. This is not a thing done by chance. There's a great book if you want to read it. It's called The Sovereign Individual. And The Sovereign Individual is one of those books you read in life that kind of changes your perspective on everything. And we're really watching the sovereign individual play out in real time. And that's, one of the theories in there is just always go where you can be most free. And Russia now is one of the more free places in the world, despite the fact we've heard in our entire lives that it's still communist. Communism ended in 1989. Interesting thing, I'm going to do another video this week about World War II and how the Bolshevik papers from 1989 have completely changed the entire narrative of history, especially regarding World War II. But in 1989 change, we've seen Putin actually eliminate corporate bureaucracy. We've seen him come onto the scene, the global scene, and rally other nations behind him because he's going through the tyrannical process of dealing with the dollar. We've used the dollar as a weapon. Putin has stood up to it. What we're watching with Putin in Ukraine is the exact same thing that happened with Germany and Poland, and I'll go through that this week. It's the exact same scenario. And he was invited in. I don't care what anyone says. I actually had a talk with a Ukrainian at the Bitcoin conference in Nashville who hated me for 35 minutes and gave me a hug when we were done. He's offered peace multiple times. They've declined it. Zelensky is now looking for peace. So in the middle of all this, he is now opening his doors to people from all throughout the world who want to escape Western liberalism. And I think that's a great thing. I'm not going to Russia. I'm staying in America, but I know plenty of people right now are thinking, man, Russia would be a great place. They don't have McDonald's, and they've gotten rid of a lot of bureaucracy, and they've kicked out Satanists, and they deport people, and they have their borders sealed. But there's another nation that's doing the same thing. El Salvador was the same thing, very welcoming to escape Western liberalism. You're watching foreign nations become more free than your own. And to me, that's the scariest component of this whole thing, especially after watching the DNC last night, which, by the way, I'll probably watch part of it tonight. I will probably spend an hour watching just the crap show that occurs at a DNC. I made a comment last night. I don't know if any of you all found it funny because it's probably funnier saying it in person than typing it, but the DNC reminded me of a Tony Robbins event for useful idiots. It was, listen, this is the dumbest idea in the history of the world. Yay, I love that stupid idea. How ready are you for another stupid idea? Yay, here we go. It's this constant propagandizing of people who are already completely propagandized. But it is fascinating to watch. I mean, every speaker talked about Joe Biden. You had a room, and this is the most concerning part. You had an NBA stadium. That's at the United Center. I grew up in Chicago. The United Center is not a small place. I think it holds 20,000 people for a game, but when you add people on the floor, there's probably 40,000 people in that room. Maybe 60 or 70 of them went there on their own accord and weren't paid by the DNC. But nonetheless, there were still, 30, maybe 40,000 people in that space that were saying, "We love you, Joe," while they can't afford bread. I mean, really think about the strangeness of this time. And the term useful idiot, I've gotten a few comments on YouTube of people saying that's mean. I don't mean it to be mean. I mean, I guess I kind of do. But I don't mean it to be horrifically mean. I don't mean it to say they're an idiot. A useful idiot is a term that Stalin used for his supporters before he took over Russia. And as soon as he took office, he killed them first. They're useful idiots. These people are being propagandized to basically regurgitate lies to the rest of the world. These might as well be the first people who invented Santa Claus. They literally will listen to anything they're told. They will regurgitate it in public, and they will strong-arm their family until they believe them, or they'll leave their family in the dust, which is what we've watched for the past 4 or 5 years. So watching these speakers come on and talk about a pretty dull time at the DNC, very boring, until they started talking about abortion. And then they started talking about putting Trump in jail. Then the crowd went wild. And that really does tell you a lot, because this is an event. The RNC was one thing, right? You had a lot of people there wearing crosses, a lot of people wearing American flags. They were there for God, family, country, the things that I appreciate the most in this world. But when you look at the other side of the table, they are wearing the weirdest things ever, blinking cowboy hats from Washington State. I mean, none of this stuff makes sense. And they're wearing T-shirts that are anti-American propaganda. And when they start talking about abortion and putting an innocent man in jail, the crowd goes wild. I mean, the crowd went wild. They had Planned Parenthood, who, by the way, plans nothing and has no intention of teaching anyone anything about parenthood, because all they do is vasectomies and abortions. And they had a free truck outside, where if you want to just go ahead and volunteer for the depopulation agenda of the deep state, you could do it for free. You got applauded. So we're watching these people applaud demonistic things, satanic things in public. They're not even scared of it. They're not hiding it anymore. They took a gentleman who was handicapped. By the way, I'm going to tell this story. I don't know why. I like being live with you guys instead of filming behind a camera. They had a handicapped gentleman who could barely speak, and my heart breaks for him. It does. And they put the microphone up to us. Nobody knew what he said. The lady standing next to him translated him. All it reminded me of was like, wow, this guy's the next Stephen Hawking. Another guy who we can't actually tell if he knows anything, but they'll translate his mumbles to make it sound like he's the smartest guy in the world. I don't believe in Stephen Hawking. I don't believe that he's that smart. And I think that they're probably grooming him to be the next one. But it was still cruel. It's just very mean to do. So I'm going to give you a lighter note of how society has changed with regards to this. And if this offends any of you, I guess I'm sorry, but I think we should all be a little better. Political correctness. I did an episode, if you haven't seen it, on just a very quick 4-minute video on the purpose of cancel culture. Cancel culture is a 3-part objective. It has a 3-part plan to get to voluntary genocide. This is how it's been used through all of history. So you start with political correctness. Don't allow people to say what they want, especially in a free nation. If they continue to use the wrong words and phrases, then you go into cancel culture, which silences and silos them and separates them from society. So they're not really human anymore. So if they keep saying or doing these things, then it's okay if the government just kills them. And it's a long, drawn-out process, but we've gone from political correctness to cancel culture. Genocide is next. So we all need to be a little less edgy on political correctness, because this was one of the funniest moments that I couldn't laugh at in recent history in my life. So I went to a lunch with a bunch of folks that work at one of the top 4 accounting agencies in the world, huge company. Won't say the company, won't say their name. We did an intro, kind of the stuffy corporate intro. I'm Eric Rice. I do this for a living, and this I have 2 kids, and blah blah blah. Well, in the middle of an intro, one guy was telling us that he invented a marketplace for public services for handicapped people. That's his technology project, which is great. We certainly need more services for people who don't know how to take or can't take care of themselves. Now, in the middle of this, he started telling us a story, and we could barely understand him, but he started telling us a story about a kid that he used to mentor who was handicapped. And one of his handicaps was that he was always nervous, and he talked a lot, which I can appreciate, because I've got an 11-year-old like that, not handicapped, but she talks a lot, and I love her. But in the middle of this, he said that, he even said, you might not find this funny, but I did, and I thought it was hilarious. But in one of his trips or mentoring journeys with this kid, he was at a baseball game. I think he went to a Rangers game. And at the Rangers game, the guy next to him at the game looked over at the kid and he said, why do you talk so much? You just keep talking. And the kid responded and he said, well, I'm retarded. What's your problem? And I mean, for me, that was a drop the mic moment. I thought that was one of the funniest things I've ever heard in my life. And the entire table was stone silent. They had just been so neutered by cancel culture in a big corporation, they couldn't understand that this guy was trying to tell you a joke. It's not mean when the person with the handicap calls the other, like literally says the word and makes the comment, because that was literally a mic drop moment for that kid. Wow, we're not laughing. It's almost offensive to that kid who had one of the best jokes I've ever heard. A little bit of a sidebar. I just found that hilarious in my personal journeys and wanted to share that with you. So getting back to the politics at hand, which are the creators of cancel culture, the creators of political correctness, these are all by design to bring in communism via genocide. I mean, that's what happened. I find it funny that this is a well-known thing, especially for those who study 5th generation warfare or psychological warfare. It's a very well-known thing. Very few people talk about it, and almost no one talks about the fact that it has been used to kill over 100 million Christians throughout history. Christians. Yes, that's right. Christians have been murdered and persecuted as well. We never hear about that in the news. But on the flip side of things, we have the DNC, right? So Harris came out and she says, I'm going to implement price controls, which is obviously communist, no free market allowed. It will put companies out of business. It will destroy margins. Margins create employment opportunities. The more money a company makes, the more people they have to hire. This is very proven to be true. So in a market where we have the highest corporate bankruptcies on record, we have the highest personal bankruptcies on record, startups failing at 60%, we have a presidential and unelected bureaucrat that is trying to run for president on the other side who wants to implement price controls, which ultimately lead to breadlines. I think there's been enough covered in the press about that. I don't need to teach that. But her three latest stances right now, she wants to impose a 28% corporate tax. Trump lowered that to 20%. When Trump lowered the corporate income, the corporate tax rate to 20%, employment flourished. People had jobs. People who had the jobs got raises. That's what happens when companies have higher margins. They actually don't want to pay taxes on it, and they disperse it back to employees through increases in hiring and increases in wages. And I know this because I've been a CEO, and that's exactly what you do when you have more money. You don't want to pay corporate tax. You would rather pay your people and retain them and that talent so you don't have to find new talent. She wants to go along with Biden's 44.6% capital gains tax. Any of you who own a house, and say you bought your house in 2018, and you're now sick of everything, you want to go off grid and buy a trailer and move into the country and farm your own chickens and grow your own food. Now you're going to have to pay 44.6% on the profit you made on your house. So if you bought your house for $300,000, it's now worth $600,000. You're not getting $300,000. You're getting about $175,000, and the government's taking the rest. By the way, these capital gains taxes they implement always correlate with a new rise in estate taxes. They are trying to tax your dead body 50% when you die. That's how communists take over nations. There's no other way around that. They tax you when you're born, they tax you while you're living, and they tax you when you die, so your heirs can never receive whatever it is you've left for them. Whatever you have left after all this tyranny, they're going to take 50% more, depending on how much you make. I've got a great guy coming on here who deals with these taxes and these types of issues here in September. So it should be a great interview when I bring him on and talk about really the corruption of these taxes. The other thing that she's going along with is 25% unrealized gains taxes on the high net worth. So let's talk about tax the rich. Tax the rich is not an AOC line. She did not invent this. That comes from every Stalinistic leader throughout the world, whether it was Mao or whether it was Maduro. Any of these people have always started out their campaigns by saying, I'm with the poor people. We're going to tax the rich. And within a 10-year time frame, everyone is taxed at that rate. Because at that point in time, the rich have no profits to spend. They have no money to buy new businesses. They have no jobs to provide. And ultimately, in the end, their capital is dissolved, which means that everyone who gets paid by them, their capital is then dissolved. So a 25% unrealized gain tax on the wealthy will not end with the wealthy. It will end with you. And here's how it works. Again, say you bought a house for $300,000 and it's now worth $600,000. You would now have to pay 25% of $300,000, $125,000 in taxes just to keep your home. That's a gain. That $300,000 in equity in your home is actually considered an unrealized gain. You haven't sold the house and realized it yet, but you certainly have that gain, and they want their pound of flesh. They will use this to extract all cash from every family that you've ever encountered. Every person you meet will be dinged with this, whether they bought a collectible, a Joe Montana autograph, and it's now worth more, or a house, anything like that. If you think I'm kidding, they're already registering every asset in Europe. What happens in Europe via tyranny happens in America a few years later. Whatever happens in America with fashion or finance goes to Europe a few years later. And they always lead the way because these nations are completely disarmed, they're neutered, and more importantly, they have no resistance. There's no resistance in Europe. If you're watching this in Europe, I pray for you literally every night of my life because I think Europe is so close to the brink of complete tyranny that it's really frightening. But they are already putting together portals for you to register and tokenize your assets. I know that there's a big push in the world to tokenize assets. I think if it's done right on a very trusted, open source, publicly displayed, very transparent blockchain, that's decentralized. There's probably some benefit to it. There's benefits to it if we decide to do it. Let me put it that way. There are benefits to tokenization when people decide to do it. When governments force you to do it, they're setting you up for a big steal. So it's already happening in Europe. You're already watching them build portals for you to register everything from every stock you own to Rolex watches to your wedding ring. They're not doing that because they want to help you out. They're doing that to track what you own, to see how much they can extract from you before you die, before they tax you again. So that's what's happening. That is literally the democratic platform that you're watching right now. Kill babies, let pedophiles free, call them minor attracted people. Let everyone be, you be you, right? You be you. Everyone can be weird. You can be gay. You can do all that other stuff. That's the democratic platform. So that'll attract the weaker minds that just want to live free and be strange. And there's nothing wrong with weird, strange people. Half of them are my friends. I like weird people. I don't like demonic weird people. So the abortion ticket is going to be what you hear for the rest of the year. You're going to hear higher taxes. They're going to use this play. Listen, I know that it costs you more to live, but you have reproductive freedom. You can kill your baby anytime you'd like to. This doesn't happen in any other country in the entire world. There's not a single country in the world that has this much energy and effort put upon killing babies. In almost every other civilized nation in the world, the focus is on finding the right person, getting married and raising children, not having drunken sex every night, getting a baby and flushing it down the tube. So they're going to promote hedonism and demonic activities through this Democrat platform. And on the flip side of things, you have the Trump platform and the conservatives. Now, I'll state this over and over again. I'm not a Republican. I'm definitely a conservative, and I'm definitely MAGA. I believe in making America great again. I don't believe in either political party, and neither should you. They have done nothing but rape and pillage from you since the moment you were born, and they both need to be eradicated, and new parties need to arise if parties are necessary. We should be looking at candidates. We also should be removing finances or fundraising from candidates. None of the money being raised. I literally just got 10 text messages today asking me for donations for conservative causes. Like, how many more do you need? Trump just raised $350 million in the last month and a half through a conference, through a large APAC donor. They already have a lot of money. So where does the money go? And I don't believe any of that money. Some of it goes into TV ads and hiring people. I get that stuff. But, I think Biden had $1 billion last campaign. That money goes in the pockets of union officials who buy votes. So the more often we keep putting private money into public campaigns, the worse this is going to get. I hope that we get to term limits, and I hope that we get to a position where we have 2 parties, maybe 3 parties. Once they're elected, they get a budget from the government to be able to use on their campaign, and that's it. I don't think any of us should be contributing money, especially the big money donors. I know some of these people personally, and they don't make donations out of the kindness of their own heart. They make donations so they get favors and breaks in the future. That's just the way the world works. Don't hate me for saying it. It's just the truth. So we need to eliminate that. Everybody talks about dark money, but light money is just as dirty as dark money. The difference is, you know who to blame in light money. Dark money is hidden. But nonetheless, the Trump campaign, the platform is fantastic. If you haven't read his 20-point plan, you definitely should. Maybe I'll put a link on this summary on the page. But the thing that he just did today that was confirmed by his campaign is he is going to be promoting the death penalty for pedophiles. So we have one president wanting to raise our taxes and kill more babies. We have another president who wants to eliminate income tax, raise tariffs on imports, and kill pedophiles. The choice is clear. I don't know if the choice can get clearer throughout the next 3 to 4 months, because when you look at, like 80 days? So over the next 80 days or so, you're going to be hearing from the left demonic stuff, from the right conservative values. My vote is going to Trump, make no mistake about it. And 80% of the country's vote is going to go to Trump. I said this for 2 years now. And I still believe they're going to try to steal it, because these Social Security numbers will definitely be used for voter rolls. And we've seen very little activity on changing election laws. And we've seen very little activity on removing the Dominion machines, or any machines that are connected to the internet, despite the fact that we have firsthand video knowledge of them being able to hack these machines, which are clearly connected to the internet. So no tariff, no taxes, add tariffs on imports, and put pedophiles to death. Sounds pretty biblical to me. In the middle of all this, we also have foreign activity that's happening right now. A little story I talked about last episode was what was happening in Bangladesh. An installed prime minister is now allowing the genocide of Hindus. So there are genocides happening in Pakistan. They're killing Christians. Now in Bangladesh, they're killing Hindus. So those who kind of believe in peace and actual tolerance, not fake tolerance, are being tortured and killed throughout the world. You will not hear that in the mainstream media. The PM of the Prime Minister of Bangladesh has very strong ties to the CIA. Imagine that. Imagine a world where no powerful person was connected to the CIA in any sort of way. That's the era we need to move into. These intelligence agencies have their fingers in everything. And one little piece of information before I open it up for questions and answers, which is my favorite part of this whole thing. It's why I want to do these live, is really understanding what's happening in Belarus and Poland. Now, Belarus, many of you know, the interesting thing about Belarus is when I was growing up, I kept hearing, not growing up, late 20s, early 30s, I kept hearing Belarus was just another Soviet state, a very communist state. And then in 2018, 2019, I remember reading an article where Belarus, the people of Belarus said they felt the most free out of any country in the world, including the United States. Now, they are moving their military towards the border of Ukraine. And that's a pretty well-known thing. The president of Belarus came out today and said that Ukraine is now pretty much forcing Putin's hand for nuclear war. Now, we know how this works if you've been following me for any period of time. They will use a war to distract you from a fallen economy, from their own crimes. It's a very repeated pattern throughout all of history. But we all know about Belarus. So Belarus is moving people to their border. What you don't know about is a friend of mine, I won't say his name on here because I don't want to get him in trouble, but I just spent a few days with him and his wife on our anniversary, and a really close friend of mine. He's a contractor, so he is a former military guy, did a lot of things in our agencies and left because of the corruption. Now he's a private contractor, gets called out throughout all the world. And his most recent trip to Poland, he told me, and I won't say his name so I can say this, but his most recent trip to Poland, he was wearing his Marine Corps jacket in the airport. And he said literally almost everyone who spoke English stopped him and asked him if he was coming to fight. So I started asking him questions, and I said, well, Poland, Poland just had another deep state actor installed into that country. Poland played the biggest provocation role in all of World War II. It's always been used as a stomping ground for new things. And I said, what's going on in Poland? And he said, well, they're moving military to their border. So there are at least two countries in Eastern Europe that are now moving military towards the border. And I think this is something that all of us need to pay attention to. I really do. I know that there's a faction of people who say, oh, it's just going to be a scare event, fake war. Real people are dying. And a scare event's necessary. I totally understand that. You're going to have to change the hearts and minds of people throughout the world. That'll happen on its own at the trajectory we're on right now. There is absolutely no chance that a single soul will escape some of the devastation that we're going to see moving forward, because I can completely see markets collapsing after October. I think that GDP number is far more important. Of course, they're going to try to rig it and put together any number they can to make it seem legitimate. But that GDP number, the real GDP number, looking at the stats through the economy right now, would be a negative. And it has been for quite some time, but they keep showing up. If you remember about a year ago, they told us our economy was growing at 5.8%, which is a number that you see in good times. We're not in good times. We're in the bad times that are caused by weak men. And this is the time for the strong men to start creating good times again. So if you're out there, you're raising a son, daughter, doesn't matter. If you're raising children, raise them to be strong. Raise them to find faith. You will find so many people in your life that will be coming to you asking you, how do you stay calm in these periods? And it's a simple fact. The worst thing that can happen to me on planet Earth is that someone sends me to heaven. That's the worst thing that can happen. So if you really put that into perspective and you've got faith and you're focusing in on eternity, the rest of these times will not be as scary as they probably want them to be. Now, I believe wholeheartedly that there are battling forces. I've been talking about this forever. We're in a punch, counterpunch, covert psychological war that's probably going to be going kinetic very soon. There's a lot of pump fakes happening in the market. Every 5 to 6 days, we keep hearing Iran's going to attack Israel. We keep hearing Israel's going to keep attacking other people. We don't know what's happening over there, but we do know what's happening is in this country, we are watching a media still provoking civil war. This is the age, this era will be known as the era of great provocation. No matter how you slice and dice it, when a government's gaslighting you on everything from the jobs number to abortion to, I will never forget, I think it was the second day after the election in 2020, I will never forget the news saying there's no such thing And they repeat it on every channel. There's no such thing as election fraud. Of course there is. I looked it up immediately. Something like 100,000 people have been arrested for election fraud. Of course it's real. But when you have a media that's gaslighting people this bad, and there's stadiums filled with them who will only vote because someone's a woman, or because someone's black, or because someone will allow them to continue to kill babies, or that someone will allow them to do drugs in the open air in a city, we have much bigger problems that go beyond governments, financial markets, or so mean people on social media. The problems in this world stem from the household. They stem from a lack of backbone when it comes to teaching your kids that we all serve a kingdom, and that kingdom is not on earth. My son knows it very well. It's a very, very old saying that he would, same as me, I would rather die on my feet than live on my knees. And we're approaching times where that type of courage is going to be needed. I don't think we're going to be needing it for the kinetic events that other people are projecting. I do think that will happen throughout the country, but I don't think it'll be a very prevalent, widespread event. I think what we're going to really be dealing with is a real harsh dose of reality and a real strong hand of discipline for a nation that's lacked discipline for the better part of 50 years. So that being said, let's go ahead and open up for questions and answers. I have the chat here. This is my first time doing a live on YouTube, so please forgive me if I'm behind this here. I see a bunch of you on here. Hey, Tim, Dustin, Daniel, hey guys. Corey, hey guys. Actually know half of you in real life, which means I need a bigger audience. I got too many friends on here. But if you have anything you'd like me to cover, anything I haven't covered in this live, two things. I'm happy to answer any questions or talk through any ideas that you have. And I'm also happy to wrap up and go take my son to boxing. So either way, just go ahead and let me know in the comments. I think I'd have never been on a YouTube live, either as a viewer or as a content creator. I guess that's what I am. So I've never been on. I don't know if you put it in the comments or if there's a chat section, but if there's anything you'd like me to cover, please feel free to put it on there. I'll cover it for you. If not, God bless you all. Thank you so much for coming today. I hope that this new setup is good for you. We switched over from the standard, I take time at the end of the night and put together some ideas, record it, send it to my editor, Alex, who's awesome. And he gets to me the next day. I just want to be able to get these things out to you as quick as possible. So now we have been live on YouTube and Rumble for about an hour so far. If there's anything else that I can do, Emily, last night was horrendous to watch. Thank you, Sally. Thank you for the video and audio. Thank you all for coming here today. I don't think we have any questions. I think we can wrap it up for the day. Any questions that you guys have, please feel free to reach out on YouTube or excuse me, on Telegram or on Twitter. Those are the only two places that I am. I've had clone accounts on both of them for the longest period. I am literally a nobody, and they still clone my accounts. But it's just me. I'm on EA_Rice on Twitter. I'm Critical Rice Theory on Telegram. If you have anything, leave it in the comments here. Of course, any comments you leave, I guess, help more of these videos to get out there. And any sharing you can do with any of these videos will greatly help us as well. I don't monetize this at all. I have no intentions of doing so. They're running ads on it. I may take that eventually, but I'm not going to make a special subscription or anything like that. I'll work for my money and share what I learned from the real world. We've got a few questions here before we wrap up. Okay, we have somebody. I have Chicago updates. I lived there for the better part of my life, and everything you're hearing, I hear it all the time. It's a false flag. There's no one there. Chicago is overrun with liberals right now. That's 100% certain. Almost everything on Michigan Avenue is either vacant or boarded up. The mere fact that they are doing this event at the United Center on the west side is a little risky. The west side is as bad as the south side if you've never been to Chicago. But yes, please, I would love to have an update on Chicago on Thursday live, what's coming there. Can you please clarify that it's not a great time to buy a home yet? You know our situation. Only clarify that on the real estate side. I don't think it's ever a bad time to buy your home. I think that the mere fact that about 80% of all retirement savings in the United States, about 80%, is either held in a 401k account or in equity in a home. That is not, neither one of those two are liquid. Neither one of those two help you. You've got to do something extra, at least extra paperwork to get your cash. So I don't think it's ever a bad time to buy your home, the home that you live in. I think if you find the home that you love and it's a place where you want to raise your family or retire or live there for a long time, there's never a bad time. Negotiate the price. Try to get it down as much as you can. Mortgage rates just dipped a little bit. They will go back up. If I were looking personally, I have a very strong hunch that the Fed is going to drop rates about 0.75. So before the end of the year. So if you're getting a mortgage on this, I think that you're probably going to look for something that you can close in like October or November. I think by then you'll see much lower mortgage rates, so a more affordable payment. I don't believe in the model of buy the house and whatever rate it is, you can refinance later, because refinancing costs $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 in fees. But I don't think it's ever a bad time to buy the house that you're going to live in. I think it's a bad time to buy investment real estate, a multifamily home, a single family home that you're going to rent, an Airbnb. I would stay away from Airbnb investments right now as much as I possibly could. I was looking at buying one a year ago. I ended up putting that money in Bitcoin. I've made way better return on that than I could with the Airbnb. But I think that the opportunities for those real estate, for you, Michelle, I think the opportunities for investment in real estate are going to come late next year, mid next year, but it's never a bad time to buy the home you love. That's just the way that I look at it. I've never looked at the house that I live in as an investment in any way. I look at it as a place that's my own, that I love, and that I want to be in every day. So I hope that answers your question for you. I know, and I'm watching the chat while I talk. I'm only seeing a few, but I am watching. I'm learning. Day one here. Thank you, LC, for coming. Best resource for people to learn about digital currencies for Dustin. LC on here, blockchain backer. I don't know that I've seen that show before. For Dustin, the best place first of all, I think that anyone getting into crypto, anyone getting into digital currencies, you study the standard and you variate from there. So I would go to Robert Breedlove and Michael Saylor had a great 8-part, I think it might be a 9-part series called the Saylor series, which is all about Bitcoin. If you're interested in crypto, I've studied them all. I've put money into a lot of them. I've made some money with some of them. I'm just a Bitcoin only. I'm a simple man. I don't really want to be trading the markets, playing the markets, and I have big reservations about many of them and big red flags for many of them. But I would go to that and learn Bitcoin first. I like Monero too, by the way. I don't have any, but I don't have anything but Bitcoin anymore. I've sold it all. But Monero, I think, is a good play for privacy. I'm going to be doing a workshop here, or Q&A for all of you guys here sometime this week. Now that I have this setup figured out, I couldn't do it before. Camera's in the wrong spot, computer's in the wrong spot. But places I would go, I would start with the Saylor series. I think it's really good. Even if you hate Michael Saylor, which many people do, listen to him. The guy's smart. He's one of the best investors that's literally ever lived. And I would take what he says very seriously. But I would check that out. I would also check out. I would read the Bitcoin Standard. It's just kind of one of those books generationally you have to read. But before I studied anything about crypto, I read The Sovereign Individual. I think The Sovereign Individual, my friend Michael gave that to me. That book really will change your point of view on how sovereign you actually are. So anything about digital currencies, things like that, there's plenty of good shows out there. There's plenty of shills and bad actors out there that promote bad things because they get paid for it. I would start by understanding things on your own before I really start looking to anyone else. Dustin, I hope that helps you. That's a good place to start. I think the Bitcoiners in general have a much more macro view as opposed to a technology view on money itself. And I believe that every person, whether you love crypto and hate Bitcoin, everyone should have some. It's kind of like Microsoft or GE in your portfolio of your 401k. But start with the standard and work out. There are certainly some really interesting crypto projects out there. Really, really interesting crypto projects out there. Some of them are standalone blockchains with their own native currency. Some of them are layer 2s for Bitcoin. Some of them are layer 2s for other platforms. But it's really difficult. It's really difficult to give you a good reference of someone that I think provides good information. I'd start with the Saylor series. Blockchain Backer, though, great for putting that up there. I'll check them out and see what I think of them. But I think that's all we've got here, all of our questions here today. So hour and 2 minutes, perfect time. I hope all of you have a great day. God bless you. God bless this country. I think we can't say that enough in this world. We really can't. Thank you for coming to my home here today and hanging out with me. So we'll be doing another one of these. I'm hoping these I can do every day. It's very difficult for the other process we did. So we will go live again. Maybe we'll start doing every day at 4 o'clock. and just going through the day's news and opening up new topics. I'm going to go through an alternative version of World War II. I think it's another topic to touch on. Candace Owen opening up a can of worms. I know plenty of you support what she's doing, and plenty of you hate her. She did not say anything in that 9-minute video I saw on Saturday that was incorrect. She didn't say anything on there that was incorrect. Michelle, no, I have never sold Bitcoin. I have never actually ever sold. Actually, I take that back. I had some Bitcoin in like 2019, like a few $100s worth. I sold it because I needed to move. But since I started accumulating in 2022, I've never sold a Bitcoin. I'll be honest about all these things too. You can ask me anything. But we'll cover some of the topics because Candace Owen, her video on pedophilia in Israel is 100% true. I put a post out about that with all the headlines. But more interesting to me is her conversation with the Tate brothers about World War II, how there's so many different stories about World War II. And I'm going to share some of those along with some of the links that you can go to. Some of these documentaries that are made are really well done, but they're really long. So I'm going to do a quick summary of a couple of them and walk through a revisionist version of history, because history has always been told by the winners. And the winners aren't usually who you think they are, because the losers have always been people like us. So we're going to walk through that. And I think there's so many correlations between World War II and now. The Ukrainian-Russian war is an absolute replication of Poland and Germany. It's an absolute complete reconstruction. It's interesting watching the Trump campaign and the things that they're doing and comparing them with Germany getting out of Weimar Germany. So I'm going to go through that. What is today? Tuesday. I'll do that probably on Thursday or Friday. Before that, I'll do a quick market rundown. I hope that helps y'all. This is just stuff I look through all day while I'm trying to figure out where I put my next pennies and see if I can get a nickel in return. And I hope it helps. So sovereign individual. Somebody asking me for the writer. Yes, I got it right here. Sovereign Individual was written by James Dale Davidson and Lord William Rees-Mogg. So I'll put that on the screen so you can screenshot it from where I'm at in the camera. And you can't see it that well. There we go. This book is fantastic. By the way, reading this, I think this was written 15 years ago, but reading it sounds like people that are just waking up today. Great book to read through. I think that's all I have. Kristen, hopefully that helps. Hopefully you screenshot that. I will repeat it. It's James Dale Davidson or Lord William Rees-Mogg, the two authors. They also have a book called The Great Reckoning, which I have not read yet. And I am in the middle of the Fourth Turning is here right now, and it is very similar to the Fourth Turning. If you haven't read the Fourth Turning by Howell, I highly suggest that. But that's all I've got for you here today, guys. I'm going to get back. I got to take my son to boxing, get a little workout in myself here today. So thank you so much for joining us live here on the Rice Report. I will see you tomorrow, hopefully around the same time, 4 o'clock. Reach out on Telegram or Twitter and tell me if these times are good for you or bad for you, because I can move them around anywhere between 4 and 7. But I'll try to get these times in every day where we can go through topics and you guys can put in some questions here, and I can do my best to answer. I will definitely tell you if I don't know the answer to a question. I think it's one of the biggest problems in the world is people answering out of their butt instead of answering in the right way. So thank you so much for being here today, everybody. God bless you all. God bless this country, and we'll see you tomorrow. Have a great one, everybody.